Project Tal is an open-world action RPG built in Unreal Engine 5 and inspired heavily by Korean mythology and folklore. The game pulls a lot of its visual style from traditional Tal masks and old myth stories, and you can see that influence all over the world design. Early footage shows wide landscapes, strange temples, and these huge mythical creatures roaming around that you'll have to face in big battles. Combat looks fast and very movement-focused. You're chaining together attacks, dodging around enemies, and looking for the right moment to strike. Timing matters a lot, especially when you're dealing with the bigger monsters. And yeah, some of these things are massive. The game actually lets you climb onto certain enemies to reach weak spots, which makes fights feel more like tackling a living boss instead of just hacking away at a health bar. There's also a companion system where NPC allies can fight alongside you. Each one has their own skills and personality, so they're not just background help. They change how certain fights play out and give you more options in combat. If the final game delivers on what the early footage is showing, Project Tal could end up being a pretty wild fantasy RPG.
What? There you go.
Damn! Stop right there! Where did he go?
It's you! Whoa, too many.
Stop! There he is! Nowhere to run down! Don't move! Have a taste of my ass! No! Put it out! Put it out!
The Godslayer is an open-world action RPG from Pathia Games, and it's also built using Unreal Engine 5. The game takes place in a large steampunk-style world that changed forever after a disaster called the Godfall. You play as Cheng, a fighter known as an Elemancer. That means he can control different natural elements. Fire, water, earth, metal, and wood all become tools in combat. The trick is learning how those elements work together, because the game pushes you to combine them during fights. The big threat in this world comes from powerful beings called Celestials. These godlike figures appeared after the Godfall and now control huge parts of the world. Cities, governments, and entire groups of people have been forced to live under their rule. The world itself looks pretty massive. Huge industrial cities, giant machines, and tall layered environments you can explore vertically. On top of that, different factions are trying to survive and hold on to power while these Celestials loom over everything. So the game mixes big exploration with elemental combat and a story about humans trying to push back against something much bigger than them. The Witcher 4 is the next big RPG from CD Projekt Red and the start of a brand new chapter for the series. This time, the focus shifts fully to Ciri. She's the main character now, and the story follows her traveling across parts of the continent the series hasn't explored yet. Instead of continuing Geralt's path, the game is about Ciri building her own place in that world and dealing with the problems that come with it. CD Projekt Red is also rebuilding a lot of the tech behind the scenes. The game runs on Unreal Engine 5, and the goal is a much bigger and more detailed open world with systems that react more to what you do. Combat and RPG mechanics are also being reworked so things feel smoother and deeper than before. We've only seen a technical demo so far, shown during Unreal Engine presentations. It gave a small look at what the future version of this world might look like. Dense forests, huge environments, advanced lighting, and really clean performance on PlayStation 5 hardware. But it's still early. CD Projekt Red made it clear the game is deep in development, so it'll be a while before we see the full picture. Blood Message is a story-focused action adventure from 24 Entertainment, a NetEase studio, and it's their first big single-player game built in Unreal Engine 5. The setting is ancient China during the late Tang Dynasty in the year 848 AD. The story follows a messenger traveling with his young son during the chaos of the Shaju Uprising. At first, the job sounds simple. Deliver an important message to the imperial capital of Chang'an. But the trip quickly turns into a long and dangerous journey across hostile land. The road stretches for thousands of li, and the two of them have to cross rough terrain, war-torn areas, and places where danger could show up at any moment. Gameplay mixes third-person action with stealth and survival elements. You're not charging into fights all the time. A lot of the tension comes from moving carefully, managing limited supplies, and dealing with threats when they appear. The story leans heavily into family and sacrifice. Even with the big historical backdrop, the focus stays on this father and son trying to survive the trip and deliver a message that could change everything. No Law is an open-world FPS and RPG from Neon Giant, the studio behind The Ascent, and it was revealed during the Game Awards 2025. The game runs on Unreal Engine 5 and takes place in a city called Port Desire. It's a huge neon-lit place where the idea of law basically doesn't exist anymore. Crime runs everything. Power shifts between gangs, factions, and whoever has the most firepower. You play as Gray Harker, a former military guy who tried to step away from all the chaos and live a quiet life. That doesn't last very long. Something pulls him right back into the mess, and now he's dealing with a city full of corruption, desperate people, and groups fighting for control. The gameplay mixes first-person shooting with RPG systems. You're not locked into one style either. You can sneak through areas quietly, hack systems to get an advantage, or just kick the door open and start blasting. The choices you make in missions and conversations also shape how things play out. So the way you move through the city, the people you trust, and the fights you pick can all lead to different outcomes. If you're into cyberpunk worlds and story-heavy shooters, this one definitely looks like something to keep an eye on.
Preparing to transfer now. This is your last chance to bail, June.
Do it.
Exodus is a big sci-fi RPG from Archetype Entertainment, a studio formed by former BioWare developers like James Olin and Drew Karpyshyn. From the start, the goal with this game is clear: strong story, big choices, and a massive space setting. A lot of people immediately compared it to Mass Effect, and honestly, that comparison makes sense. You play as Jun, a genetically enhanced salvager working out in deep space. Your job is basically to travel far from the safe parts of human space and recover valuable tech and resources. But things get way bigger than a simple salvage run. Jun ends up caught in a major conflict tied to the survival of humanity itself. The main threat comes from a powerful species called the Celestials. These beings are far more advanced than humans, and dealing with them turns into a complicated struggle where every decision matters. One of the interesting ideas in Exodus is how it handles time. Because of long-distance space travel and time dilation, actions you take on one mission can affect people and civilizations years later. So the story plays with the idea that choices echo across huge stretches of time and space. If you like deep sci-fi and big decision-driven RPGs, this one could end up being a huge deal.
But with the right ship and the right crew, you could save all of us.
I was on an alien world. Felt like I was finally doing what I was made for.
Thank you, June.
We are the defenders of Leiden's future. And we will fight to protect it.
Black Myth Zhong is a new action RPG from Game Science, the team that made Black Myth Wukong and quickly got attention around the world. The game was first shown with a teaser trailer at Gamescom 2025. This time, the focus shifts to Zhong, a famous figure from Chinese folklore. He's known as a ghost hunter who tracks down demons and punishes evil spirits. The game takes that legend and builds a dark fantasy action story around it. Right now, the project is still very early in development. The team is still working on the main story, the gameplay systems, and the overall structure of the game. Because of that, there hasn't been any real gameplay footage yet. There's also no release date confirmed at the moment. What the developers have said is that the game will be a single-player action RPG, similar in spirit to Wukong. Expect heavy myth themes, a darker atmosphere, and combat that moves toward that tough, Souls-like style, where timing and precision matter a lot.
Hey,
Hey,
Hands above your head, now!
you stay.
I'm remembering the time
The new beginnings.
you break the news, isn't it?
you need to dance. The way we move.
Trust me, this place is just the start for us.
Ring the bell! Shots, baby!
The only thing that matters is who you know and what you got.
Grand Theft Auto 6 is the next big open-world crime game from Rockstar Games, and it's set to release on November 19th, 2026. The studio pushed the date back a bit so the team could take more time polishing everything. The game runs on Rockstar's Rage engine and launches on PlayStation 5 and Xbox. This time, the story takes place in Leonida, a fictional state with Vice City sitting right at the center. It's a modern take on that classic location, but the scale is way bigger and the world is packed with activity. The story follows two main characters, Lucia Caminos and Jason Duval. Their lives start to connect as they get deeper into the criminal world around them. From what's been shown so far, the game strongly embraces that Bonnie and Clyde style setup. Jobs go wrong, alliances shift, and everything is built around chasing money and staying alive in a place full of corruption and excess. If Rockstar sticks the landing here, this could easily be one of the biggest open-world games they've ever made.
Not enough. I need more. Pick your battles, Biggie.
Onimusha Way of the Sword is Capcom bringing the Onimusha series back after almost 20 years. The game is planned for a 2026 release and runs on Capcom's RE engine. The setting goes back to feudal Japan, but it's a dark fantasy version filled with demons and strange supernatural threats. Combat is built around careful sword fighting. Timing matters a lot here. Blocking, parrying, and hitting back at the right second can decide the fight. You play as a legendary samurai inspired by Miyamoto Musashi. Along the way, you use the Oni Gauntlet, a supernatural weapon that lets you absorb the souls of enemies and unleash powerful attacks. Most battles are designed like tense duels, where one mistake can cost you. The enemies are part of the Genma, a demonic force that shows up across the series, and they look just as twisted as you'd expect. With the RE engine behind it, the environments look detailed and pretty grim, which fits the tone perfectly. It's shaping up to be a serious action game with a lot of focus on skill.
We promised we'd never be apart. It pleases. It was promised!
I need to know that I just made the right decision.
It's me, boss. Wait, how long?
Since the last time the sun died, mate.
You left us here. We've lost people. There's no way to get home, and you...
Lies! This is what it does. It gets in our heads, and it twists, and it turns. I won't break our promise. I will make everything perfect again. I know you're here, and I will find you.
Saros is a new action game from Housemarque, the same studio behind Returnal, and it's shaping up to be one of the bigger PlayStation 5 exclusives people are waiting on. The game runs on Unreal Engine 5 and follows a soldier named Arjun Devraj. He's sent to check out a strange planet called Carcosa, a place locked under a permanent eclipse. The combat sticks close to what Housemarque does best. You're dealing with wild bullet patterns, tons of enemies on screen, and constant pressure that forces you to keep moving. Standing still is usually a bad idea. You've got to dodge, shoot, reposition, and stay sharp, or things fall apart real fast. One of the big mechanics here is a defensive shield. It doesn't just block damage. The more fire it absorbs, the more power you can send back at enemies. So the game pushes you to play aggressively instead of hiding. There's also a big change compared to Returnal. Saros lets you upgrade your gear permanently between runs. So even if you fail a mission, you're still getting stronger over time. Every attempt builds on the last one, which should make the whole loop feel a lot more rewarding. Tomb Raider Legacy of Atlantis is a full remake of the original 1996 Tomb Raider, rebuilt from the ground up in Unreal Engine 5. The game was revealed during the Game Awards 2025, and it brings Lara Croft's first adventure back with a modern overhaul. This isn't just a visual upgrade. It has been expanded and rebuilt to feel bigger and smoother, while still keeping the core idea of the original. You're still exploring huge ruins, ancient tombs, and thick jungle areas, but now those places are larger, more detailed, and built with modern movement systems in mind. Traversal has been updated so climbing, jumping, and navigating the environment feels more fluid. Combat has been reworked too, and the puzzles have been redesigned so they still feel like classic Tomb Raider challenges, just with a more natural flow. The main goal is still the same. Lara is searching for the Scion artifact. But the way the story unfolds now ties exploration, danger, and discovery together in a much smoother way. For fans of the original game, this looks like a big return to where Lara Croft started. OD is a new project from Hideo Kojima and Kojima Productions, created in partnership with Xbox Game Studios. The game was revealed with a strange teaser, and since then, it's easily become one of the most mysterious titles in development right now. Kojima describes OD as a cinematic horror experience built around fear and human psychology. The idea isn't just to scare you with monsters or jump scares. The goal is to push players mentally and see how much tension and discomfort they can handle. Details about the actual gameplay are still pretty limited. What we do know is that the project runs on Unreal Engine 5, which helps create extremely lifelike visuals and environments. The early footage already shows a very realistic look, and that realism seems to play a big role in the atmosphere. Instead of following the usual horror formula, OD seems more focused on uneasy moments and psychological pressure. It's less about constant action and more about the feeling that something isn't right. Knowing Kojima, it will probably experiment with how games tell stories and how players interact with them. Right now, OD is still very much a mystery. But with Kojima involved, people are expecting something weird, bold, and very different from typical horror games. Divinity is the next big RPG from Larian Studios, and it was revealed during the Game Awards 2025. This isn't a remake or a small follow-up. Larian is treating it as the next huge step for the series, and they've already said it's the biggest project they've ever worked on. Early teasers show a dark fantasy world filled with strange rituals, heavy atmosphere, and a tone that feels a lot closer to the older Divinity games. At the same time, the studio is clearly trying to push the scale way beyond what they've done before. The overall scope might even go past Baldur's Gate 3, which already set a pretty high bar for choice and freedom in RPGs. The game is being built on Larian's own tech, the same internal tools they've been improving for years while making their RPGs. That's what allows them to build those really reactive worlds where small choices can change quests, characters, and entire story paths. Right now, details are still pretty light, but the goal is clear. A huge fantasy RPG packed with systems, player freedom, and the kind of branching storytelling Larian has become known for. Tides of Annihilation is a fantasy action-adventure from Eclipse Glow Games built with Unreal Engine 5. The story takes place in London after a strange invasion has torn the city apart. Streets are wrecked, landmarks are broken, and parts of the world feel like they've merged with something ancient and mythical. You play as Gwendolyn, one of the last survivors left after the disaster. While moving through the ruins of the city, you start discovering that the modern world has collided with old Arthurian legend. Places like Avalon begin showing up beside destroyed parts of London, and the line between myth and reality starts getting pretty thin. The main goal is to find the Holy Grail, which seems tied to what's happening to the world and the force that caused the invasion in the first place. Combat has a cool twist too. Gwendolyn can summon spectral versions of the Knights of the Round Table. These ghostly warriors fight beside you, letting you call them in during battles to overwhelm enemies and control the fight. It gives the action a mix of fast combat and tactical moments. Control Resonant is the official sequel to Control from Remedy Entertainment, and it pushes the series way beyond the tight halls of the oldest house. This time, the story moves out into Manhattan, but not the normal version. The city is warped, damaged by strange paranormal forces, and reality itself keeps bending in ways that don't make sense. Buildings twist, the streets feel wrong, and something big is clearly tearing the world apart. The story centers on Dylan Faden, Jesse Faden's brother from the first game. Instead of being stuck on the sidelines, he's now right in the middle of the chaos and dealing with a much bigger cosmic threat. Dylan comes with his own set of powers, and the big new tool here is a strange melee weapon called the Aberrant. It's not just a basic weapon either. It shifts form and changes how you fight depending on the situation. Like the first game, a lot of the fun comes from mixing those powers with the environment and the weird physics of this world. Things break, float, and explode in unpredictable ways. Remedy is clearly pushing further into the supernatural side of the series, and it looks like this sequel is aiming for something bigger and stranger than before.
And you are?
Rob Minkley.
He's with me.
Come on, Moneypenny. If I lose the trail, we'll never know who they're working for. Oi, you lads got a faulty coffee machine?
007 First Light is a new James Bond game from IO Interactive, the same team behind Hitman, and it runs on their Glacier engine. This one tells an origin story for Bond, focusing on the early part of his career before he becomes the famous 00 agent everyone knows. So instead of a polished super spy right away, you're seeing Bond at the start. He's younger, still proving himself, still learning how to operate in this world of spies and secret missions. The story follows him across different locations around the globe, with missions built around stealth, planning, and careful infiltration. Because it's made by the Hitman developers, a lot of the gameplay is built around player freedom. You're not forced down one path. You can sneak through an area quietly, use gadgets to solve problems, or sometimes go loud when things fall apart. And of course, it wouldn't be a Bond story without car chases, spy gear, and tense action scenes mixed in. The big idea is giving players room to approach missions creatively, while still telling a clear Bond story about how this guy eventually becomes the legendary agent with the 007 number. Solasta 2 continues the tactical RPG style from Solasta, Crown of the Magister, and expands it with a bigger scale and Unreal Engine 5 visuals. The game is set to enter early access on PC on March 12, 2026, and it sticks closely to that Dungeons & Dragons style of turn-based combat the first game was known for. You control a party of adventurers traveling through a land called Neokos. The world is filled with old secrets, strange ruins, and signs that something dangerous is building in the background. As you move through the story, you slowly uncover what's really going on in this region, and the history tied to it. One of the big threats in the story is a mysterious figure known as Shadwin, and a lot of the tension builds around that presence. Like the first game, party dynamics matter a lot. Your group members have their own personalities, and the choices you make can shape how things play out. Combat stays very tactical. Positioning, abilities, and teamwork make a huge difference, especially in tougher fights. If you enjoy slower, thoughtful RPG battles where planning every move matters, this sequel is clearly trying to push that formula even further. Star Wars: Fate of the Old Republic is a single-player action RPG set during the Old Republic era of the Star Wars timeline. The project was revealed at the Game Awards 2025, and it's directed by Casey Hudson, the same guy who worked on Knights of the Old Republic and the original Mass Effect trilogy. So right away, you know the focus here is big choices and story stuff that actually matters. The game takes place during a messy time in the galaxy. Political tension is high, old rivalries are boiling over, and the future of the Republic is hanging by a thread. Your decisions play a big role in how things unfold. And the whole idea is that every call you make pushes the galaxy in one direction or another. It's being developed by Argonaut Studios with Lucasfilm Games, and it's running on Unreal Engine 5. That means they're aiming for a big, detailed world full of planets, factions, and conflicts tied to that classic Old Republic era people have been asking to see again for years. If you're someone who loved the old, story-heavy Star Wars games, this one is clearly trying to pick up that torch and run with it. Valor Mortis is a first-person Souls-like action game from the team behind Ghost Runner. The setting is a twisted version of Napoleonic Europe, where history has gone completely wrong. The battlefields, the uniforms, the old war imagery, it's all there, but it's been warped into something dark and almost nightmarish. You play as a soldier who died in battle and then got dragged back to life. The catch is that the thing that revived you is a strange plague. It's not just a curse either. It also gives you unnatural powers that change the way you fight. Most of the gameplay focuses on brutal melee combat. Fights demand tight timing, careful movement, and learning enemy patterns. Very much in that punishing Souls-style design. But those plague abilities give you extra tools, letting you push back against the twisted creatures and horrors that now roam these war zones. So you're moving through corrupted battlefields where normal soldiers clash with things that shouldn't exist at all. It's part historical war setting, part supernatural nightmare, and the tone is very grim from start to finish. Marvel's Wolverine is a single-player action game from Insomniac Games, the studio that made Marvel's Spider-Man. This one focuses fully on Logan, and the goal is a much darker and more violent take on the character. The game is planned as a PlayStation 5 exclusive and is currently targeting a fall 2026 release. Combat centers on Wolverine's claws, so fights are close, brutal, and fast. It's not about flashy superhero tricks as much as it is about raw, physical combat where Logan tears through enemies up close. The story digs deeply into who Wolverine actually is. The anger, the pain, the long, messy history. This game digs into all of that while sending him across different locations around the world. And along the way, you'll run into familiar faces from the X-Men side of Marvel. Characters like Mystique and Omega Red are set to show up, which means the story isn't just about Logan fighting people, it's also about the complicated relationships and rivalries tied to his past. Fatekeeper is a first-person RPG built in Unreal Engine 5 and focused heavily on sword fighting and magic inside a dark fantasy world. The game puts a lot of attention on how combat feels. Every swing of a weapon has weight, and you're not just mashing buttons, you're timing strikes, blocking attacks, moving around enemies, and mixing that with spells when things get messy. And the cool part is you can shape your character around the way you like to fight. If you want raw strength and heavy weapons, you can build toward that. If quick movement and close-range fights sound better, that works too. Or you can go all in on magic and start blasting enemies with spells. The world itself is full of old ruins, strange relics, and places that clearly have a long history behind them. Exploring those areas is a big part of the game, and a lot of the time it leads you into dangerous fights with enemies that actually make you think about how you approach combat. It's not just about swinging until something falls over. You need timing, positioning, and the right build to survive some of these encounters. Atomic Heart 2 is the official follow-up to Atomic Heart and continues that strange retro-Soviet sci-fi world the first game introduced. This time, the developers are going bigger with it. The world isn't just a few facilities or regions anymore. The scope spreads out much wider, with larger locations and more variety in the places you explore. It's all being built in Unreal Engine 5, so visually it's aiming for a much bigger step forward too. Combat is getting expanded as well. There are new abilities, more options for how you build your character, and generally more freedom in how you deal with fights. The first game already mixed weird technology, bizarre robots, and heavy action, and the sequel looks like it pushes even further into that strange tone. You still get that unsettling feeling from the world, where things look advanced but also completely off at the same time. Story details are still mostly under wraps, and there isn't a release date yet. But the goal here seems clear. Atomic Heart 2 is trying to take the ideas from the first game and push them into something much larger and more ambitious. Halo Campaign Evolved rebuilds the original Halo Combat Evolved from the ground up using Unreal Engine 5. This isn't just a visual upgrade. The goal here is to recreate the classic campaign with modern tech, while expanding parts of the game that were limited back in 2001. The familiar missions return, but now they're rebuilt with full 4K visuals, new lighting, updated animations, and more detailed environments. Areas that players remember from the original game are being redesigned with larger spaces and more detail, so those old battlefields feel bigger and more alive. Controls and movement are also being modernized to match current shooters, which should make the game feel smoother, without changing the core gameplay that made the original so iconic. The remake even adds new bonus missions and extra story elements that weren't part of the first release. So longtime fans still get something new to discover, while the main campaign stays true to what people loved about it. The idea here is pretty simple. Keep the spirit of the original Halo intact, but rebuild it with modern tech so it feels fresh again for both old players and new ones.
The Covenant are putting up a real fight. The cartographer must be here. My analysis indicates that the map room should be at the bottom floor of this facility. Let's keep going inside. Don't let them lock the doors. Interesting. I underestimated the Covenant's understanding of Halo's subsystems. We need to find the security override to get this door open.
Song, yeah? Time to settle up.
Gang of Dragon is a new action-adventure game from Nagoshi Studio, led by Toshihiro Nagoshi, the creator behind the Yakuza and Like a Dragon games. The project showed up during the Game Awards 2025, and right away you can see where its roots come from. It's a street-level crime story with a heavy focus on brawling, but it's not just copying what came before. The vibe here is rough, grounded, and pretty intense. The trailer shows tight city streets that feel a lot like Kabukicho. Bars, alleyways, neon lights, and a whole lot of people ready to throw down. Fights look very physical. Every punch lands with weight. Characters slam into tables, crash through crowds, and the camera stays close so you really feel the impact. This isn't about flashy superpowers or wild spectacle. The focus is raw street fights and messy confrontations that feel like they could actually happen. If you like the rough, personal style of crime stories from Negoshi's older work, this one already looks like it's carrying that same energy while trying a few new ideas of its own. Woochi the Wayfarer is a fantasy action-adventure game from Lore Vault, published by Nexon, and it's built with Unreal Engine 5. The game takes its story from an old Korean folktale and reshapes it into a modern fantasy game with a big focus on magic and myth. The main character is Woochi, a Taoist scholar who carries strange magical powers tied to ancient traditions. The world around him pulls heavily from Korean folklore. Spirits, old legends, and mystical forces all play a role in what's going on, and visually, the game really embraces that identity. From what we've seen, the environments mix fantasy landscapes with cultural elements pulled straight from those stories. Combat looks like it blends martial arts with spellcasting, so fights aren't just sword swings. You're mixing magic into everything you do. It feels like one of those games that really wants its setting to matter. The lore, the myths, and the look of the world all seem connected to the story Woochi is moving through. If you like fantasy games that lean into real cultural inspiration instead of generic worlds, this one might end up being pretty interesting. Tomb Raider Catalyst is a brand new game in the Tomb Raider series, officially revealed during the Game Awards 2025 and built in Unreal Engine 5. This one moves the timeline forward and follows Lara Croft years after the events of Tomb Raider Underworld. The setup is pretty wild. A strange, mystical disaster shakes the world, and suddenly ancient ruins that were buried for centuries start rising back to the surface. That brings out all kinds of trouble. Lost powers, old secrets, and plenty of rival treasure hunters racing to grab whatever they can. Lara ends up traveling through big open zones packed with ruins, hidden paths, and environmental puzzles. You're exploring massive areas, figuring out how to move through old structures, and dealing with cinematic moments that the series is known for. The story taps into that classic Tomb Raider idea, where history and myth start to blur together. Ancient forces begin showing up again, and Lara has to figure out what's really going on before the wrong people get their hands on it. It sounds like a bigger, more modern step for the series, while still sticking to that core treasure hunting feel. Crimson Desert is an open-world action RPG from Pearl Abyss built on the studio's Black Space Engine. The game takes place on the continent of Pywell, a rough fantasy land where kingdoms have collapsed and war has left most of the world in ruins. You play as Cliff McDuff, a mercenary trying to survive in the middle of all that chaos. He's not some shining hero. He's just a tough guy doing what he can to stay alive while figuring out where he fits in a world that's basically falling apart. The game mixes heavy melee combat with a huge world to explore. You're traveling across mountains, towns, battlefields, and wild lands while running into different factions, giant bosses, and all kinds of side activities. It's the kind of game where you might head somewhere for one mission and end up getting distracted for hours. Crimson Desert was once tied to the lore of Black Desert Online, but now it stands completely on its own. The focus is more on Cliff's story, the brutal world around him, and these big moments of warfare and exploration. If Pearl Abyss pulls this off, it could be one of the bigger fantasy RPGs out there. Alright, that's it for today. 27 new upcoming realistic graphics games of 2026 and 2027. Thanks for watching. I really appreciate your time. If you enjoyed the video, drop a like and subscribe if you're new. Tell me in the comments which game you're most excited for, and I'll see you in the next video.